The lantern light threw thin shadows as the shared ledger thudded down. The lacquered spine squeaked when someone dragged a scalpel across it, gouging a line through the joined initials and splintering the braided wax that held the pages together. Shards scattered, the rasp reverberated, and the circle froze over the fresh fissure. No words, no explanation, only the scent of scorched wax rising from the impossible cut. The glow steadied over the scarred table as the circle returned to its measured rhythm. A steady hand swept a cloth through the spilled shards, arranging them beside the ledger in an almost ceremonial gesture. The eldest read the margins aloud, voice low but even, cataloging debts, favors, petty grievances that always hovered near the edges of their shared trust. A thin scrap of paper, folded twice, slid from between two pages. Someone reached for it, fingers brushing the rim of the sealless book as naturally as breathing. The youngest nodded, already marking a fresh tally on the slate board. Grain accounted, watch schedule set, charcoal clicking softly on stone in time with murmured agreements. Outside, the wind licked the charcoal siding, but inside the circle, breaths fell into steadier cadence. Cups clinked with herbal brew, and the ledger settled at length, its spine releasing a satisfied sigh. For now, that was how things stayed. Watchful, deliberate, anchored. Mara pushed her chair back until it scraped the concrete and grabbed the kettle handle. Steam curled toward the ceiling. "You said the patrols never cross the river on Thursdays," she said, tilting the kettle enough to fill 2 chipped mugs. "Maybe not when you get your update." She set a mug in front of Abel with a deliberate clack. Abel's jaw tightened the way it did when he tried to swallow the twang in his voice. Dita reached across the counter, pressing her palm flat on his forearm to stop him from taking the mug. "Tell it," she said, eyes locked on Mara. "Now." He looked at the wall clock, its minute hand ticking loud enough to count down every second between them, and then at the mug. "They told me to wait until the next rendezvous," he said finally. "New patrols were moving through the northern pass. I was ordered to keep it to myself so we didn't spook anyone." He stared at his hands, then back at Mara. "I promised." Mara slammed her palm on the counter, splashing droplets over Abel's sleeve. "You promised to be honest when you signed the pact," she said, voice tightening around each word. "We nearly walked into those patrols because you kept us blind." Dita stepped forward and grabbed Abel's collar. No more secrets. None. Her breath fogged the window behind them. "If you hide one more move, we break the loop without you." She let go, but her fingers left faint crescents on his shirt. Abel shut them out with a shuddering breath, then reached under the counter. His fingers came up clutching a folded map with a grease smudge in one corner. He set it in the middle of the table and slid it toward Mara. "The intel they fed me said there was a shipment at the warehouse by the riverbank. Glossy code names, nothing real. I know now it was the movement of the courier they fear the most. I didn't pass it along because I was told you'd panic, that the courier's type attracted attention. I had to pick a side." Mara unfolded the map, the paper creasing like a sigh. There, in sharp ink, was the crossing schedule they had been missing. A tear-shaped mark aligned with the date they needed to be gone. Dita leaned back, her shoulders dropping, the tension stayed in her fingers. "So we run tonight," she said, voice low. "We adjust for the courier. We carve a new route. But Abel," she jabbed a finger at him, "you don't get to hide the crucial bits again." Abel nodded, the skin around his eyes pale. "I won't. I'll stay with you all the way." Mara traced the inked itinerary with her fingertip, and then pushed the map toward the door. "We'll need a scout on the bridge by dusk," she said, already moving through the motions of boarding packs. No more whispers in the dark. As Abel reached for the door, Dita stepped into his path. "And you'll keep your word by speaking first if something changes," she said, then turned her head slightly, listening. "Time's tight." He nodded again, this time slower, as if engraving the rule into his bones. The door swung open with a gust, carrying the smell of wet earth and pattering rain. Outside, the night waited with the same expectancy that always fell between their breaths. Inside, Mara sealed the kettle with a twist and tucked it away. Something tangible, like the map's ink, to remind them that trust might still be rebuilt with action, not silence. "Bring anyone else who doubts," Mara called, her voice steady. "We'll put them in the middle and let the truth spill out where everyone can see it." Abel met her gaze and stepped out, trailing a silence that now carried new weight. Dita watched the door click shut behind him, then looked at Mara. "We move tonight," she said, pulling the map toward her. "We stick to it." Mara nodded, a slow inhale stretching her chest as she picked up her pack. The map's ink glistened slightly under the harsh bulb, an irrefutable reminder of the path now before them. The firelight lagged behind the circle's hurried breaths as the new map unfurled across the crate-strewn table. I slammed my palm onto the chart, the tremor in my arm refusing to settle. "We leave in 2 hours," I barked, fingers stabbing at the jagged line toward the east ridge. If Abel's patrol intel was the only thing between us and whatever watched the pass, then nothing about tonight gets softer. Abel stood off to the side. Coat sleeves rolled, the smell of damp wool mixing with smoke. He held his gaze steady long enough that I thought he might say nothing, but then his hand dropped to his hip. "I should have said more," he admitted. The words came out small, but they rolled straight toward me. They said surviving the night depended on keeping quiet. He glanced past me at Mara, punishing the map with her boot. But you can see what that silence did. The patrol would have caught us camped at North Hollow. Mara dragged her boot away from the paper, leaving a muddy crescent. "So you kept us blind for orders you never challenged?" Her voice cracked like someone matching rage with breath. "You do realize the patrol would have cut through us like frost?" Abel's jaw flexed. His fingers curled around the length of the dagger at his belt. "They brought my sister in chains to the barracks. I had 3 nights to choose what they called the lesser shame." He stepped closer, the firelight finding the scar on his cheek. "I thought if I gave them an innocuous lie." He pointed to the map with a shaking finger. "That kept them from sending reinforcements this direction. I could still get to you before they knew. The courier this afternoon, the one Myron intercepted, it proved they were already on our trail." His voice rasped with a breath he barely allowed. "I told them the pass was clear. I told you the same tonight. I thought that kept both you and her alive." A rustle came from the tent flap as Lynn stepped in, the shadow of the sentry patrol lingering behind the canvas. "They moved the patrol 2 hours ago," he reported, thrusting the newest courier slip onto the table. "You'd be staring down a squad if you pushed north now." He read the layout of tired faces and flicked a glance at Abel. "But the eastern reroute is clean." I snatched the slip, fingers digging into the paper's corner. The lines matched the map's new path, the one Abel finally offered. The betrayal had already cracked a wall between us, but I could taste the relief of not walking straight into a trap. "So we take the eastern ridge," I said, the words sharp. "We move fast. Abel, you're riding with me. I'm not letting you out of my sight until we cross the pass." He nodded, the gesture small, as if accepting a sentence. Mara tossed the muddy boot aside and started barking orders about rations and watch shifts. The tension off the table replaced itself with the click of gear being slung on shoulders. From the chaos, a tiny relief. The group finally understood the full weight of what betrayal had nearly done. Yet we also had the knowledge to dodge the danger. The fire spat again, and the night grew louder with boots and whispered plans. The reward stood plain, a narrow escape. Abel's confession had cost us, but it also gave us the new route and the chance to keep moving. I met his eyes, the cold building back up. But the plan tightened around us. We had a path forward and the knowledge that trusting someone now came with a watchful grip. The emotional aftermath still burned, but so did the resolve. Tonight, we moved with purpose, not denial. The firelight in the cairn tent caught on the copper edges of the patrol slip Lynn had pinned to the canvas. He ran his thumb along the courier stamp, the ink still tacky from haste. "They left the northern post 4 hours ago," he said, eyes scanning the ragged handwriting as if wanting it to morph into something friendlier. "They headed across the valley plateau. No way they can circle back before dawn." Marek knelt beside him, 2 fingers over the map Abel had just drawn. "Eastern Ridge makes sense," he muttered, pushing a charcoal line along the crest. "It keeps us above any ground patrol, and the shepherding stones will break sight lines." He tapped the plan, then jabbed back toward Abel. "And we stay east of the stream. No trace." Abel stood near the tent flap, shoulders raised, hands wrapped around a warm iron gyre. He kept his gaze down, but Lara caught the tremor in his jaw when she stepped forward. "You'll have a lead on the first watch," she said, voice low, no softness. "Marek rides with you until we're past the foothold. No detours." Abel's fingers scraped the gyre. "Understood." He didn't look up, but the air thickened. He had been among them for years. Loyalty shaped him. Everyone felt the tug of old trust. It still wasn't trust now. Lyra pinched the edge of her pack and turned to the others. "Tell us again about the caravans at East Hollow," she said quickly before Abel could move away. "Who else has gone quiet?" "Gin and her 6, Varen answered, rubbing a bruise along his temple. "They reported a supply hand sealing records, saying it was a precaution. The same seal Abel said he knew." "Nordic guards mentioned 3 couriers misdated by the same scribe," Marek added, pushing the map toward Varen. "All tied to this route." Lyra tapped the parchment. "We have never seen that pattern by accident. Not one courier, not one note. It's the same hand, same language. Replies always coming in whispers before midnight." Abel took a step forward, then halted when Lyra's gaze snagged his. "People don't hand over patrol intel for nothing," she said, flicking her belt knife from its sheath. "You didn't. You were forced." He swallowed. "They threatened my sister. Maybe," Varen cut in. "But the pattern's bigger. We heard from 2 more patrols. Both had contacts who went cold after promises of new pay. They all knew the same phrase: send them through the ridge. Not coincidence. Not. Lyra raised a hand. "Then we leave with the ridge under our feet," she said, letting the tent flap fall closed. The wind pushed through the entrance as they stepped into the night. Marek led, Abel beside him, Varen rear guard. Lynn slipped a glance down the ridge path. No guard lights, no movement. The eastern ridge opened like a promise. As they started, Lyra turned once toward the tent. The fire burned low. The cairn of evidence stood in the center. She nodded once, an unspoken reward for the truth now in hand. They knew what they faced, and now they moved with eyes open. The fire was little more than a glow now, but the eastern ridge map lay in its full light. Everyone drew close, elbows jostling, breath fogging the paper while the wind tried to scrape it away. Lynn brushed a sleeve over a courier slip, then slid it so the circle could see the patrol shift time stamped in fresh ink. No one dared look at Abel. Their eyes kept drifting to him, like they feared the ground would tremble if they stared too long. "You said the patrol moved 3 hours ago," I said, pulling Abel up by the shoulder so the chair scraped back on stone. "Where exactly did you hear it? From whom?" He opened his mouth. The words came fast and then slowed. "Garen's men." I cut him off by slapping my palm onto the map, sending a crease through the ridgeline. "Names now, times now, not later when you decide to own up." He swallowed, and his hands trembled around the braided cord of his satchel. "Garen threatened my sister if I told. He promised the patrol would kill me first." "Then let Garen come get you," I said. I slid a hunting snare from my belt. The others flinched. "We move with certainty, not with you deciding how much to risk." I bound his hands around the corded pack, spacing the rope so it would pinch if he tried to slip away, but leave enough slack for him to march. Lynn stepped in with the courier slip and overlaid it with Abel's recounting, circling the time, the ridge bend, the patrol's new path. The matching ink smelled like damp clay. The circle leaned in, their shoulders finally eased by a notch. The silence stayed, but it no longer weighed like a stone. 2 watch shifts. "Twins from the north wall," I said, tapping the map where the ridge pinched. "No detours, no delays. Abel walks between them and the path. If he stumbles, they answer to me." Lynn nodded, sliding the slip into her boot. "I'll carry it. If the patrol changes again, I find you before we drop below the ridge." We moved as one then, boots crunching the gravel edge. The eastern ridge unfurled ahead, a hard line of wind-battered stone. Abel matched our pace, eyes flicking between the rope, the ridge, our faces. Lynn kept her hand near the slip in her boot, fingers drumming once and letting go. The first ridge notch appeared. I pointed it out to the watchers and the others, and we stepped over it together, leaving the old pass now a hazard behind us. The ridge narrows at first light, shale spilling under each boot, and I keep the circle bunched tight behind the courier slip pinned to Lynn's thigh. Abel trudges ahead of the pack, hands cupping the straps of his pack because the rope binding them loops around his wrists and the lead of 2 watchers. Jory's shadow never leaves his side. Kira's spear tip hovers when he leans toward the ledge. I catch the light on the slip again. Grit scratches our palms as Lynn runs a finger along the courier's ink. I shove the page into the center of the group and jab my thumb at the line that spells out the patrol's new westward drift. "We called it," I say, voice folding over the wind. "We named the lie, and now we have the map that keeps that patrol off our heels." No one argues. We do not nod toward Abel. We do not pretend that the old rhythm still exists. Abel's mouth opens. Kira steps between him and the gap where the ridge drops to fog, her spear angled down at the path. "You never told us the pass was dead until the patrol had already burned through our trail," I add, my hand flat on the slip so Lynn can't peel it away. We don't hand him a lantern for the next leg. The watchers take a half step back, knees bent like they are waiting for a charge. Abel's voice goes low. "I never—" He doesn't finish. The rhythm of his breath tightens into a hiss that mirrors the wind. Jory flicks a glance at me and then tightens the rope around Abel's pack, sliding the knot up to the watch buckle. The circle sees it, another boundary drawn in leather and sweat. Abel's head drops. He keeps quiet because speaking would be stepping too close. The ridge flattens into a shelf where the trees finally thin. Lynn lifts the courier's slip against the glow, then squints through the spyglass. "Courier was scheduled to pass the ridge 3 hours ago," she murmurs without looking away. but the smoke from the valley is still lined to the south. The patrol didn't swing east. That means their window to the old pass closed sooner than Jala thought. The group spreads, shoulders brushing the edge. We catch movement, a dull flash of flag on the valley floor, 2 antlers of light quarters below the old trail. They shifted early, I say, breathing steam. We shift with them. No ghosts of the old route. Lynn ticks the slip sink with her finger, and the spyglass light slides over the eastern ridgeline again. Concrete proof ripples through us. The tension that sat heavy over Abel's shoulders loosens in small mechanical increments as Jory reroutes him toward the rear without letting him near the lead. Mini payoff. We now have confirmation that the patrol never had the chance to catch the courier. Our alternative route stays viable. Abel stays a tool weighed down by rope, and the circle moves forward. Night will fall in another hour, and we will still be on the eastern ridge. No one starts up the old path. The watchers exchange a glance, then pull their shoulders back so their bodies form a living barricade between Abel and the new road. I step into line, whispering instructions about the next stretch, the slip pressed flat against my palm. We are not forgiving. We are not forgiving ourselves for thinking we could go back. We keep walking because naming the betrayal gave the path a purpose, and keeping the watchers tight keeps it from collapsing into old lies. The ridge narrowed into a spit of stone where wind could turn words into knives. I motioned the lead pair to slow, the pack straps clattering as Abel moved at the rear, the rope taut between him and the watchers. Lynn stayed close with the courier slip folded inside her coat, fingers tapping the inked schedule every few breaths. I stepped off the trail, plants rasping under boots, and swept a hand across the horizon, not to admire it, but to draw eyes inward. "Watchers, hold," I said. The 2 nearest us shifted, bodies like living barricades, the rope tightening with a soft groan. Abel's head jerked up. The rope went slack by inches, then taut again. "You're not just under watch," I told them, voice low enough that the wind couldn't steal it. "You're under rewrite. I want the courier slip read out line by line, and I want you both to verify it twice. Then you'll tell me what you told them about the northern pass." One watcher, Morrow, barked the schedule back. The other, Sarah, counted the relay riders aloud. Abel's jaw worked, his hands flexed against the rope. When the last line ended with the patrol still on the old road, I tossed the slip onto a flat stone between us. Sand hissed around the edges as I slammed my palm down, flattening it. The ink trembled but held. "You had one chance to keep us blind," I said, taking a step forward. "We survived because you finally spoke. That doesn't mean we pretend we didn't almost die." He inhaled sharply, the rope rattling. "I said what I could," he murmured, eyes on the trail. "You said it last night," I replied, after you'd already been watched every step. A pause hung, heavy. I could feel the watchers waiting for what I'd do next. The fracture widened, a creaking canyon between what we were and what we needed to be. "I'm not letting you walk the lead again," I declared. "You will carry rope and nothing else. Lynn, keep the slip inside your hand until the ridge ends and the caravan clears the plateau. Morrow, Sarah, you rotate every hour. If Abel's rope loosens, you speak, not me." He nodded, the rope tightening like a second throat. The watchers each touched the rope, ratcheting the slack down in silent agreement. "Now," I said, pointing at the trail ahead, "finish the descent we told you we'd take. No detours, no old roads. Every mile you confirm our heading with me. If the slip disputes you, you tell me before the ridge falls away." Abel's shoulders slumped, not in surrender, but in acceptance of the line drawn. The watchers stepped to flank him, forming a moving wall as we resumed. The ridge air caught in my lungs, cold, sharp. And for the first time since the confession, the path ahead felt truly ours again. The ridge held its hush like a vow. Lynn's hand never left the courier's slip, pressed against her thigh, its paper warmed by her palm, while the watchers formed a slow, implacable train ahead and beside the taut-roped rear. Abel went with them, ropes slack between his shoulders and the pack, eyes forward, the betrayal a new shadow in the way their shoulders turned at him. No one stepped back. No one reached for what once felt whole. The ridge narrowed, the eastern ridge unspooled before them in wet stone and light, thinning toward the distant valley fires. The watchers' gazes met only with each other, a quiet oath of vigilance, while the narrator's voice, low and steady, marked every hour until the final bend swallowed the path. They moved without detours, every footfall a declaration that the circle had changed, that the wound would never close. Beyond the last crag, the shadowed valley spilled open, and they descended together, burdened and deliberate, carrying the fragile truth that they would rebuild from the clean break itself.